So I have a bag already broken down and it's ready to go. So I'm gonna be using that for my throwing. But first, I wanted to talk about my station management. So if you are cooking in like an actual kitchen at a restaurant, you're gonna be learning your station management, because everything has to be in its place. It has to be clean, organized, so that you can be efficient and do your job. So same thing, I thought about this as a potter. I don't want to be a huge mess. I want to have things organized and clean. I clean as I go so that I don't have a huge cleanup at the end. If you're one who says, I'm just going to leave a mess and then just make a mess over the top of that, that's totally fine. I'm going to show you my cleanliness method, because maybe you're working in a studio or a community studio and you can't be messy. This is going to help you save some time to clean up, because your time is valuable, just like mine is, and you'll want to be efficient at cleaning so that you can get going and go back to your family or get to class or whatever you're doing. So the way that I set up my wheel is I throw standing up, really like this, and I lean into the clay. If you don't have access to a stand-up wheel, I recommend that you get the wheel head at your belly button. So you might need to bring bricks to the studio or prop up your wheel if you need to or can. And I do that because I want to try and keep my back straight, and then also my elbows sit right where the tray is. This is a certain kind of wheel. You might have a different wheel. You might not even have trays. So this is really this is how I do it. But I recommend that because you want to try and be centered as much as possible. So I'm leaning against a table right now, but in my own studio, I lean against a stool, which is about this height. So I found that right balance. When I was learning in the high school setting and the college setting, I was always hunched over like this. And eventually, I actually had back surgery to correct some sciatic problems. I don't recommend hunching over so much. I don't recommend leaning to one side. I'm going to give you more tips on how to keep your back straight and also stay healthy. Really, the idea here is that you strengthen your core and that that you're healthy just in your regular daily life. But beyond that, the station management. I have my trays in place because this actually acts as a way to hold my hands and my forearms. I have a 2-bucket method. The 2-bucket method is an easy way to recycle clay and to also keep your water clean. I like a clean water. I don't want it to turn into a slip. My first bucket is full of water and I have a sponge in there. And then my second bucket is all my scraps. So anytime I pull off clay from the wheel, I scrape it against the side of my slop bucket, or if there's a chunk that comes off or I mess up, it goes into this slop bucket. You can easily reclaim this by filling this all the way up with dry clay or slop and then letting it get to the bone dry stage. Then taking water, filling it up, and let it slake down and turn into slip. You can use a little immersion blender or stick blender. You can stir it around and then it will eventually turn harder, and then you can pour it on plaster and reclaim it if you would like. All right, so that is why I do the 2-bucket method. These aren't the buckets I typically use, but really I like the wide mouth bucket because then I can get a large sponge in to help me clean as I go. My big sponge is always accessible, and I use that to wipe my hands down mostly, and then wipe my wheel head off, so it's always kind of right there in the center. My small sponge is floating in the water, so I can grab it. And then I have this handy dandy tray. So a lot of people comment on this, and it's a simple purchase on Amazon or your local like Target or Walmart. It's a bottle drying rack, and it doesn't have to be this version of it. There's like the store brand, This is a brand that has the green grass bits, but I saw it somewhere online, and I love to give credit where credit is due, but I don't remember where I saw it. I just saw it in passing, and then when our kids outgrew the baby bottles, I thought, hey, I saw that being used, so then I started using it. So I can't give credit to where I saw it because I don't remember, but I use this now. I have 10 of these in my studio because my wife keeps finding more at the thrift store, but I love using them. They're so handy, they're easy to clean, and you can fit all your tools in your little caddy. And I actually have designed it so that I'm working from right to left, and in your case it's the opposite, but on the right are my throwing tools, in the middle I have my trimming tools, and then on my left I have my finishing tools. So kind of trimming is also finishing tools. All right, so I'm only working and grabbing from one side, but then as I go further in the process, I have my tools over here. Because the worst thing is like you're fumbling looking for your tool, like where is it? It's always going to be right here. So I have it here, and I'm always using my right hand for the right tool to work on the right side of the clay. If you're left-handed, you would probably flip it. So that is very helpful. If you don't have something like this, use a sponge. Watch this. This is what I tell my students at work or at school. Look at that. You have your tools accessible. Your needle tool can poke right into the sponge. And when you're doing trimming, you would do the same thing just with your trimming tools, right? You line them up, have them all ready to go. I use this trimming spinner. So you'd have it here on your sponge and you'd put it there and you would have it accessible. One thing about this tool setup is that you need to train yourself to put your tool back in the caddy. If you do this and you use it and you put it over here, you're gonna lose your tools. So train yourself to put it back in the caddy. Any tool that doesn't really fit in the caddy, I just kind of put in front where I have access to it. All right, to bat or not to bat, that is a good question to ask yourself. I use bats now because they really do help me out in my production mode pottery. This bat system is great because it has these square inserts and they can only go back in one spot. There are some that will attach to the bat pins, but I prefer these. They're made out of a wood, they dry nice, they stay pretty flat. This is the Dirty Girls bat system. We're not sponsored by anyone, but that's the one that I use and I recommend. But if you find a different version of it, go ahead and purchase that. Or just use the bats that you already have. And if you're comfortable with that, that's fine. I use these, and when I stack them up, like next to each other, so I have a cup and a cup, I always overlap like this, because sometimes they'll be wet and they'll stick to the table and it's hard to lift them up. So if they're offset like that, it's easier to pick them up and go on to the next step. So that's a little trick there too. And when I put the bat system or bat in there, I dunk it in water and then I slide it in and then I just am ready to go.